Welcome to 8th episode of Powerful Eunuchs or Transgenders of the History in the Mankind. It was in the center of the Chinese Empire, inside the vast, twisting halls of the Forbidden City. Power was the only currency that mattered. It was a land of gilded, caged souls and hidden daggers, where emperors were frequently puppets, and their mothers did act as actual kings. In this treacherous world, thousands of eunuchs, castrated men who lived and died supporting the imperial family, lived and died as ghosts, whose names and faces have been entirely erased from history, but one would refuse to be forgotten. He came into the palace as a boy with nothing and a life of thankless servitude. He would leave it as the most feared person in the empire. His name and its echoes echoed through the empire as empresses and assassins. His grip over the power was so stranglehold the whole dynasty turned into a shadow. This is the tale of Li Lianying, the eunuch of the Shadow King of China. It was Li's long reign that brought out the darkness, its story not just of a hair chop, but of one calculated, terrifying ascent to the top of the heap, steeped in conspiracy, unimaginable wealth, and two of the most prominent unsolved riddles in Chinese history. I am Czar, teaching the common man about the history of the most powerful eunuchs, or transgenders. He began his career doing the most mundane things you can imagine, yet within a few years he had the means to rule over the most influential people in the land. He was a servant-turned-master, a confidante-turned-conspirator, a hairdresser who cradled the secrets of an empire. How did a poor castrated boy become the de facto ruler of the world's preeminent powerful nation? The answer must lie somewhere between wiles or loyalty and one remarkable talent. This gave him direct access to the most powerful woman in China, the Empress Dowager Cixi. To understand Li Lianying's unexpected ascendancy, you first have to think of the world he entered. The forbidden city of the mid-negative 19th century was not the majestic, stable beating heart of an impermeable empire. It was one of profound paranoia and managed decline. The Qing Dynasty was rotting from the inside out, wounded by foreign invasions like the Opium Wars, and torn apart by internal rebellions such as the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, which would kill tens of millions. The Manchu rulers, once fierce warriors, had become decadent and soft. The Xianfeng Emperor was a weak, hedonistic emperor, much more interested in theatre and his concubines than the realization that his nation was falling apart. Into the gilded decay of this world was a 10-year-old boy named Li, who walked first through such decay in 1858. Born in 1848 to such a desperate family, Li's parents saw only one way to escape starvation: to give their son access to the palace. For a poor Han Chinese boy there was no escape from the Forbidden City except through castration. It was a brutal, life-altering sacrifice, a permanent mark of servitude that guaranteed that he would never start his own dynasty or risk the imperial bloodline. His name was changed after the procedure, and he was placed on the lowest rungs of palace life. The popular narrative goes that he arrived with a pair of scissors in his hand, but the beginning was much more humbling. He wasn't a hairdresser. He was just another face among thousands of eunuchs going about the grunt work. His first jobs were things as mundane as opening and shutting doors. He was invisible, a ghost in the machine, but Li had an extraordinary brain, clever as nothing else. He watched, listened, and very quickly grasped the complicated hierarchies of the palace. He saw that power was not to be held by the distant, remote emperor who frequently went out of sight. It was held by the women of the inner court, and most especially by one powerful concubine. Her name was Lady Yehanara, the future Empress Dowager Cixi. He also observed that despite the palace's eunuchs at all times, the art of hairdressing was an uncommonly intimate and prized craft. The intricate hairstyles of Manchu noblewomen were intricate art, status symbols and beauty symbols that took a tremendous amount of time and talent. Li recognized a path where others were unaware of one, and found work that an old eunuch specializing in hair design could perform. He devoted months to mastering the craft, learning every detail from the exact manner of washing and scenting hair to the design of the elaborate wing, like coiffures, Cixi preferred. He didn't just pick up a trade. He learned some art form that was a means to unlocking the inner sanctum of power. His opportunity followed when Cixi, an already powerful concubine, was disillusioned with her traditional stylists. Li, now a young man, was summoned. This was it, his one shot. The pressure was immense. Serving a high-ranking royal was a game not to avoid. Even a single mistake, one pulled hair, could result in a brutal flogging or worse. But Li was not only a talented hairdresser, he was a master of human psychology. He was quiet, observant, and unnaturally calm as he worked. He knew Cixi didn't just want her hair done. She wanted a moment of peace and perfect service. His work was flawless. Cixi wasn't just satisfied. She was deeply impressed by his meticulous, gentle touch. Since then, she used him to be her own hairdresser. After that day, he was a hairdresser. His work had paid off. He belonged again. No longer invisible laborer, he was Li, the Empress's stylist. This intimate, daily access was a privilege few people in the whole empire possessed. He was alone every morning when he dressed her hair with the woman who was growing ever more powerful in China. He heard her grievances, her goals, her secrets, and never, ever did he forget one single word. Li Lianying's rise from personal stylist to political powerhouse actually started with a coup. The Xianfeng emperor died in 1861, leaving his 5-year-old son on the throne. Power was to be sent to a council of 8 regents, though the boy's mother, Cixi, had other ideas. But eventually, Cixi had made a daring power grab in the Xinyu coup, allied with Prince Gong, outflanked the regents, and emerged victorious as the leader of the government. For the next 47 years, she would rule behind the curtain as Empress Dowager. In this very dangerous time, Li Lianying demonstrated his total loyalty. He was Cixi's discreet messenger, her trusted eyes and ears inside the palace walls. Though no particular details are disclosed, historical records are silent on his exact actions during the coup, but his loyalty deepened her trust in him entirely. He had risked it all with the right person, and his reward would be epic. His first major promotion followed in the footsteps of another eunuch's demise. At the time, a chief eunuch was a man known as Ndi Hai. He was Cixi's favorite, but he was arrogant and reckless. In 1869, Ndi Hai flouted a cardinal rule for eunuchs that he travelled outside the Forbidden City on his own authority, flaunting his power. This was a fatal mistake. An adversary in court, the governor of Shandong province, had arrested him and executed him quickly for breaking the laws of the ancestors. Cixi was enraged but helpless to save him. She wanted a new chief eunuch, strong, cerebral, and above all, discreet. She chose Li Lianying. At approximately 22 years, Li became the grand supervisor, the leader of a private kingdom of thousands of eunuchs and maids who administered the considerable machinery of the Forbidden City. At 31, he received a hat belonging to a 4th rank official. And at 46, he broke all precedent when Cixi rewarded him with the 2nd rank Hueling, an honorary peacock feather decoration for officials who had made monumental contributions to the state. This was a rank a eunuch was never, ever supposed to get to, a clear signal to all in the empire of his unparalleled status. Li's power wasn't an act. He acted as Grand Supervisor, the ultimate gatekeeper. He was in charge of who saw the Empress Dowager when they saw her, and what mood she'd have when they did. Officials later found out that all the way to Cixi was direct through Li Lianying. His political effect was a gold mine. Bribes poured in from officials seeking an audience or a good word whispered in the Empress's ear. He grew fabulously rich, himself having a personal fortune that rivaled the top princes in this land. His financial clout increased further when Cixi, always in need of cash to do her extravagant things such as renovate the summer palace, devised a scheme for the sale of government jobs. Li Lianying was the middleman, the power broker. Ambitious men would give him big sums that he would hand on to Cixi after taking a very large cut, in exchange for a title and a post. He was essentially administering a cash, and corruption fueled parallel administration, all under the Empress Dowager's protection. But Li was complex, not merely a greedy villain. Although he was ruthless in availing himself of wealth and power, historical accounts also document his surprising restraint. he was rarely, if ever, willing to use his position to directly interfere with state policy, as he knew that overstepping his reach could lead to the same fate as his predecessor, Ndi Hai. He had an incredible sense of compassion, too, for those below him, when junior eunuchs or maids made transgressions that engendered Cixi's wild wrath. Li would often wait for her fury to quiet and then softly advocate on their behalf, saving many from savage penalties or death. This earned him the reputation with the palace staff as being cautious and kind, which was a far cry from the terror his high-ranking officials had to bow to, but his real power lay in his unmatched ability to reign him over by managing his relationship with Cixi. He was something more than her servant, he was her companion. Cixi grew increasingly lonely and paranoid. As she aged, Li was her only constant. He got into her moods, eased her fiery moments, and celebrated her victories. He was a brilliant conversationalist, with an almost supernatural ability to read people. His hairdressing skills piqued the desire for a different life, but it was his sharp intelligence and emotional intelligence that made him indispensable. For almost 50 years he was the only person Cixi counted on unquestionably, and in the Forbidden City, where trust was more precious than gold. That made him the most powerful man in the empire. The grand power of Li Lianying inevitably brings secrets. His legacy was eternally connected to two of the most eerie mysteries of the late Qing Dynasty, the death of an emperor and his own strange unsolved death. It was all these events that turned him from a formidable figure of the court to a spectre of the conspiracy, a figure whose name would be linked to poison, murder, and decapitation around the world for 100 years. The first mystery began on November 14, 1908. That morning, the 37-year-old Guangxu emperor, who had been under house arrest for a decade, suddenly became severely ill. As his face turned to a dark, bluish shade, he complained of debilitating stomach pains. When the imperial physician could come to him, the emperor was dead. The next day, his aunt and jailer, Empress Dowager Cixi, also died. Timing was simply too perfect. For years, the official story was that the frail emperor died of natural causes. Nobody believed it. He had been Cixi's captive since 1898. When his efforts to modernize China in the 100 Days Reform threatened her conservative power base, she brutally crushed his reforms, having him confined to an island, and deprived him of all power. Rumors of foul play persisted for precisely a century. Then, in 2008, a 5-year forensic study delivered a bombshell. Researchers examined the emperor's remains and found levels of arsenic at staggering levels, more than 2,000 times greater than those found in an average person. Researchers determined that even a single, massive, and fatal dose could have produced such high levels. It was murder. The 100-year-old cold case was officially confirmed as a homicide. So, who did it? The primary suspects were three upon which the investigation immediately concentrated. The first and most obvious was Empress Dowager Cixi herself. Her motivation was clear. She was very sick and knew she was dying. She was averse to the thought of the Guangxu emperor going on to outlive her, regaining power and undoing all the work of her past life. Killing him would therefore be her last possessive act of control. The second suspect was a senior official named Yuan Shikai. During the 1898 reforms, the emperor was betrayed by Yuan, who sided with Cixi to crush the movement. He realized the emperor would be executed for treason if he ever regained the throne. For Yuan Shikai, murdering the emperor was a matter of self-preservation. And then there was the third suspect, Li Lianying. As the Grand Supervisor, Li had open access to the emperor's food and quarters. He simply might have been able to do that with terrifyingly simple ease, and the motive behind those poisons was no less powerful than the others. He had been Cixi's faithful enforcer for many decades. If Guangxu had regained power, Li Lianying would have been at the top of the list for execution. A chilling account that is told through the family of a court official has provided a haunting twist to this theory. On that lethal, fateful morning, Li Lianying allegedly carried a bowl of yogurt from Cixi's home and delivered it to the emperor. For over a century, speculation abounded that this yogurt was the murder weapon. There's no definitive evidence, but the picture of the trusted eunuch delivering a poisoned meal is one of the darkest legends about the Forbidden City to date. There will likely never be an answer to the emperor's murder. If the death of the emperor was a mystery, then the death of Li Lianying was stranger still. Li's world fell when Cixi died. His power, his riches, his very survival had been tied to her. He knew he was a marked man. After a formal 100-day mourning period, the 61-year-old eunuch requested permission to retire. In 1909, he departed the Forbidden City, taking his vast fortune with him and disappearing into a quiet, isolated life. 2 years later, on March 4, 1911, Li Lianying died of dysentery at the age of 62. He underwent an extravagant funeral, and his tomb was built in a eunuch cemetery in Beijing, and there the story would have ended. It didn't. Fast forward 55 years to 1966. Amid the upheaval of the Cultural Revolution, Red Guards descended on the cemetery to defile symbols of the old world. They zeroed in on Li Lianying's tomb, seeing him as the supreme signifier of feudal corruption. Finally, and after multiple back-breaking days of work, they broke into the burial chamber. They found treasure, but they also found something terrifying. When they plucked the heavy coffin open, expecting to find the preserved body of the great eunuch, they found only a skull sporting the long pigtail. The other parts of the coffin were empty, but there was some cotton wadding where his body might have been. Li Lianying's body was missing. He had only been buried with his head. This gruesome discovery entirely demolished the official story that he died of dysentery. A sick person is buried whole. This was evidence of a violent death, almost certainly decapitation. His death had not been quiet. It had been a brutal execution, conducted under cover of the court. But who killed him, and why? Theories swirled. Others believed he had been killed by friends of the Guangxu emperor for revenge, but most historians are skeptical. By 1911, Li was only a retired elderly man without political power. Another theory is that there were revolutionaries who were planning to overthrow the dynasty. One thinks he was murdered by enemies at court, perhaps even Yuan Shikai, who wanted to silence the only other known person on the topic of the emperor's death, who could have told them his fate had been sealed. The final, most mundane explanation is that he was murdered by bandits seeking money. Li Lianying's death, like the murder of the emperor he served, is an enigma that many people do not have answers to. All they can say for sure is about the bone, chilling sight from his ruined tomb, a head severed in an ornate casket, an inscription of mute power in human terms that became a symbol of horrific, incomprehensible violence. The secrets of the Forbidden City are long buried, but its history continues to fascinate. And if you enjoy stories about the unseen hand behind the levers of power, make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell on. Every week we surface narratives so amazing, often buried. Li Lianying's life was a total paradox. He was a castrated servant who wielded more power than a prince, an influencer of the destiny of a 250-year-old dynasty through the hairdresser trade, a trustworthy confidante, and perhaps even a murderer. 4 emperors were serving him. His first true loyalty was to one woman, but when she died, his world disappeared. He journeyed over 50 years down the most dangerous political paths on the planet as he accumulated unimaginable wealth and power to be reduced to a skull in a coffin. His tale reveals the nature of power in Imperial China. It was absolute, but it was also deeply, deeply precarious. He emerged from nothing to become head of society, all but self, serving by his cleverness and almost supernatural knowledge of the human psyche. But in the end what he concealed in some respects became entangled with both the enemies that he made and those he kept in hidden hiding. Instead, he bequeathed a legacy of not greatness, but of fear and money, but also 2 lasting mysteries that live on in the red walls of that very city, a legacy that has since been torn asunder. His life makes you wonder, when you gain the world by living in darkness, what happens when the lights at last go out?